to
the
computer
To something, yeah.
that would.
This conference will now be recorded.
Maybe that's the renovation.
Well, I was just
Put
going to
new-
say,
new clocks.
those commissioners are finally going to spend some money on a system. We're off an hour. We're off an hour.
You guys can figure it out.
We're off an hour.
All right. Let me call the November 15th meeting of the Area Plan Commission to order. Mr. Burns, would you call the roll, please?
Jackson Bogan.
Present.
Larry Leverins.
Here.
Carlos Snodgrass. Gary Schroeder.
Here.
Jerry Reynolds. Here. Greg Jones. Bob Metzger. Present. Diana Looper.
Present.
Vicki Pearl.
Present.
Michelle Dennis. Michelle Dennis. Tom Murtaugh.
Present.
Perry Brown. Here. Tracy Brown.
Present.
Jason Domkowski.
Here.
Lisa Dullum.
Here.
Kathy Parker.
Here.
Jody Hamilton. Jody Hamilton. Quorum is present.
Thank you, sir. Briefing session. Mr. Hiddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subdivision Case S5161 Odyssey Apartments has been continued to adjust the amount of green space on the site. Rezoning Case Z-2911 Edward and Lori Opperman has been withdrawn by the petitioner. All other cases are set to go forward tonight.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the October 18th, 2023 public hearing as submitted.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business, public hearing. Let me read the procedures. For those of you unfamiliar with our procedures, the Commission would like you to know the following. When we hear a request to subdivide land, we're only concerned as to whether the actual drawing showing the division into lots meets the technical requirements of our ordinance. The question of appropriateness has already been determined. Anyone wishing to make comments or provide us with information regarding any subdivision petitions will be given the opportunity to do so. When we're hearing a request for a change in zoning, we're trying to determine if the new zone being requested and the uses allowed in that zone are appropriate to that property and supported by the comprehensive plan. With each case being heard, our staff will present its report. Then the person requesting the rezone will be given an opportunity to speak. Following that, those of you wishing to speak in favor of the rezone will be recognized. And then those of you who wish to oppose it will have a turn. This will be your only time to speak. The person requesting the action will be allowed a rebuttal. Plan Commission members will then ask questions and finally vote. Please limit your statements to no more than 5 minutes. We ask that you not repeat what others before you have already said. We are a 17-member body and a majority of 17 is 9. Regardless of how many commissioners are actually present, at least 9 votes in favor or 9 votes against are required for action to be official. If fewer than 9 of us agree to either approve or disapprove an action, that case must be heard again next month. Our vote on a request to subdivide is final. Our vote on a request to rezone serves as a recommendation to the appropriate City Council, Town Council, or County Commissioners who must ultimately decide on changes in zoning. When addressing the Commission, please state your name and address for the record. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. If you need to make a call, please step out of the room before using your phone. All exhibits presented to the Commission become the property of the Commission.
I move that there be incorporated in the public hearing portion of each application be heard this evening to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Plan Commission, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendations on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from checkpoint agencies.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'm ready for the continuance.
I move to continue as 5161 Odyssey Apartments, major preliminary, to the December 20th, 2023 public hearing to allow time for adjusting the amount of green space on site.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Subdivisions.
I move to hear and vote on S5160, Three Meadows Subdivision Revised, Section 2, Major Preliminary.
I second.
Good evening, everybody. The acres in this request was subject to it.
I'm not sure.
Light's not coming on.
Probably not charged.
Good evening. Can you hear me now? John
Yeah.
Burns, Area Planning
Thank you.
Commission. Okay, the subdivision request this evening was actually approved by this body 2 years ago in November of 2021, and now petitioners are seeking to revise that preliminary plat, but only a portion of it. The original preliminary plat covered 40 acres and 67 lots. And if I... Can you advance it for me? Yeah. So this site here is at the end of Three Meadows subdivision and just north of the Orchard subdivision, just west of West Lafayette. This revised plat, which I think will show up on the next drawing here, would not reduce the number of buildable lots. Effectively, this would permit the street to enter in a cul-de-sac rather than have a bridge built to connect to Phase 1. So there's no bonding requested since this is from an existing approval. Like I said, no lots will change. The area under the bridge will be an outlot, or where the bridge was proposed will be platted as an outlot to allow for a bridge connection to be made in the future if that's deemed necessary. So staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Thank you. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Yes, Kyle Betts with Chastain and Associates, 625 South Earl Avenue. I'm here representing the petitioner. The original plat and the plan initially was to cross this minor tributary Minor Creek. That proved to be something that we couldn't do due to permitting and just cost associated with doing so. So the plan now is to simply terminate the road in the cul-de-sac. This has gone to County Highway, other agencies. Everybody has accepted this plan. So really, we're just cleaning up the plating so that we have the appropriate right-of-way area that can be dedicated for the cul-de-sac. We've reviewed the conditions that staff has recommended. We are in agreement with those and would ask for your approval vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the audience wish to speak or comment on this petition? Any questions from the board? Anything? Okay, you have a white ballot.
We have 15 votes for conditional approval.
Thank you. Rezoning activities.
Mr. President, I need to recuse myself from the next case, Canal Properties.
Thank you, Gary. Let the record show that Mr. Schroeder is recusing himself.
I move to hear and vote on S 2909, Scanell Properties LLC, GB to I3.
I second.
Okay, this rezone request is for just over 58 acres, and it's located on the north side of State Road 38, just west of the SIA plant and west of Veterans Memorial Parkway. As you can see on the map here, the property is currently zoned GB, and they're requesting I3 zoning. This area falls within the industrial expansion area that's been part of our comprehensive plan for some time, calling for this area to be the industrial corridor into the city. What's proposed for this property is a motor freight transportation warehouse operation, so probably big warehouses. And in fact, that's what exists to the north of the property. Quite a bit of those types of uses in this area. Sewer and water are in place to serve the property. Park East Boulevard, you can see on the aerial here, is just recently completed on the west side of the road. There's a curb cut existing for access to the property. This is in line with the comprehensive plan, and staff is recommending approval of this rezone.
Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Kevin Riley with RTS Law representing the petitioner. And I do have a handout if I could approach. What I passed out is a non-binding site plan, but I wanted to give you kind of a feel for what this site would or may look like when it is developed. We appreciate the time the staff has spent working with us on this proposal. We agree with the staff's report and their recommendation of approval. We agree this is an appropriate zone for this site and request your approval. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak against this petition? Any questions from the board? Gary, or Jerry, you want to turn your mic on, please?
Test. On Jerry Reynolds, on behalf of the City of Lafayette and the Economic Development Director, we support this project.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, you have a yellow ballot.
We have 13 ballots in favor of the petition.
Thank you. There should be 14.
Let's recount them. One, two. Guess we should have said- We have 14 ballots in favor.
Let the record show that Mr. Schroeder is rejoining us.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2910, HMS Rentals, R2U to R3U.
A second.
All right. Moving to the Historic Centennial neighborhood in Lafayette. We have our site here. As you can see, the quite a patchwork of zoning in the neighborhood that was largely all done in the neighborhood-wide rezoning effort that took place in, I believe, 14, right after the neighborhood plan was adopted, and later the community's first form-based code was adopted here, and that's the hash mark area that you see. Here's the site. The the site has because of its age, has a long zoning history. It's all detailed in the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. But the most recent action established the R2U was, I believe, in 1999, and that essentially was that the reason for retaining the R2U zoning was continued with the Centennial Neighborhood Plan in order to support the reconversion of older homes to their purpose-built intent. So in the Centennial neighborhood, there are plenty of homes that had been converted over the years, over the decades, to multifamily use, and for ones that were purpose-built for a certain thing, whether it's single-family or duplex or even multifamily, which Centennial has historic examples of all three of those. Plenty of them. The effort was to allow for the return to that use, and so that's sort of the underlying philosophy with these zoning decisions that were made over the years that have been supported by City Council. But the lot in question does have two historic houses. Staff believes both were built as a single-family residence originally, but now house a total of 5 units. One a duplex, and then the other building a 3-unit conversion. Both buildings are circa 1900. Of course, city utilities are available. I went ahead and explained in our staff comments about the Historic Centennial Neighborhood Plan and the various differences between the future land use categories. Essentially, the existing zoning conforms best with the future land use category that it's been assigned. And so staff sees no reason to deviate from that plan. And so we are recommending denial of this rezone petition. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Hello, I am John Schrader with Ball Eagleson at 201 Main Street. I'm here on behalf of HMS Rentals to speak in favor of this rezoning. There is a good reason for this rezone. The purpose of this rezone is to bring the property into legal conformance and to clean up zoning on this property. A year ago, this property in HMS Rentals was co-owned by Hal Snyder and Max Snyder. Now it is co-owned by Hal Snyder and the estate of Max Snyder. In the process of settling the estate, my client Hal Snyder wants to buy out the estate's share of this property, and to do so needs to get financing with a loan on the property. Because of the non-conforming nature of this, even though it's a legal non-conforming nature, he can't get a loan on this property. That is why we filed this rezone, and that's why we need it currently. If we don't get it at the city council meeting coming up, if this is ultimately denied, that puts 14 months before another rezoning petition can be put forward for anything that would kind of clean up the rezoning. That would likely result in the property having to be sold to somebody else. HMS Rentals has owned this property in this neighborhood for over 30 years and has, in that time, maintained it in accordance with the spirit of the Centennial Plan. They continue to do so going forward. If this rezoning petition is denied, I can't say that that will be the case. As staff, can we get back to the slide that shows the wider shot of all the zoning? Color, thank you. As the staff mentioned, this is a patchwork of zoning. You can clearly see that the site in question is already adjacent to properties that are already R3U, already zoned what we are looking this to become. This would not bring it out of alignment in the grand scheme of what the Centennial neighborhood already looks like. As the staff report notes, the current zoning is halfway conforming, which I would argue is another way of saying it is not conforming. The purpose of this rezone, again, is to bring this into conformance. I spoke with members of the community at the beginning of this month. At that night, in the room, the people I spoke with were understanding and accepting of this rezoning petition. It is my understanding that different people might be here with different opinions tonight, but the purpose of this rezoning is to continue the ownership of this property so that it can stay in the hands of somebody who has kept it in accordance with the spirit of the Centennial neighborhood zoning patterns and character of the neighborhood for the last 30 years. If there are any questions, I can answer them now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak against this petition? Come on forward.
My name is Stuart Frescus. I reside at 421 Brown Street, and I am the owner of 415 Brown Street, 419 Brown Street, and 421 Brown Street. I have resided at 421 Brown Street since 1992. And so I've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood. And the thing is that neighborhood is on the upswing. And, you know, my home is not a showplace, but I consider it, I recently put my home in the structures in the historic district. And the reason why I did that was because I considered them a keystone to anchor all the good work that has been done with those row houses and those type of things. And also, I'm probably one of the only owners of a property who has no off-street parking. So I have to park my car on the street. And so the thing is, if what is envisioned is an expansion of this property, or even the tear down of the property eventually, I consider those properties also keystones for the row houses. The other thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is some nice words were spoken about concern for the neighborhood. Two probably multi-hundred-year trees that were healthy were cut down yesterday. I don't understand how that enhances it certainly did not enhance the looks of the property, and I don't know how that enhances our neighborhood. And so I object to this, and I also think that the density there is fine. I live across the street from that property, but I really am not looking forward to seeing some apartment complex built there eventually if you approve a change in the zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Come forward.
My name is Kay Connor, and I live across the street from the property in question, around the corner from Stewart, who just spoke. And we all watched in horror today as two gigantic, yesterday, trees were cut down on the property in question, which we don't understand why that was done at all. But in the last few days, I walked the neighborhood and talked to people, and I got 26 signatures from our neighbors that I gave to Mr. O'Gara, who opposed this rezoning. The original 1999 R2U designation, and then the continued support of that in 2014 is what we want, because we hope that by keeping these places R2U, we can encourage them to go back to their original owner-occupied status, or at least to R2U zoning. And to let it be R3U opens the door to all kinds of unintended consequences that we oppose as a neighborhood. So I really hope that you'll oppose this for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Hi, I'm Roger Wiens. I live at 515 North 7th Street, so in the Centennial neighborhood. I was at the meeting of the neighborhood, and I'm one of the signatories. And I mean, one of the concerns that we have is that at least one of the buildings on this property is a nice historic home. There was some talk about possibly dividing the property and keeping that one nice, but that would have to happen after the rezoning, and there's no way to rezone back to R2U once it goes to R3, so that one couldn't really protect or keep that house the way it is now. And there are properties like the house that I moved into here that are being fixed up very nicely as single-family homes, and we'd like to keep some of that going. I'm afraid that to go into rezoning R3U here and perhaps ones nearby is going to open it up to just more apartment buildings and other things as we go along. So that's my reason for signing and opposing.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. I'm Ken McCammon, 613 Perrin Avenue, though I still own property at 516 North 5th Street, and I still serve as president of the Historic Centennial Neighborhood Association. I'm adamantly opposed to this procedure. It's interesting that we were informed that the attorney talked to the neighborhood. I'm the president of the neighborhood, and it's pretty commonly known that I'm president. And I never heard anything about it. And when I went to sign the petition yesterday and saw the trees coming down in the vacant lot, it's like, at least they could have had the courtesy to wait until after the hearing to show maybe their hand. I don't know. I don't know why they take the trees down unless there's a plan. So, again, I'm adamantly opposed. The neighborhood is adamantly opposed, and we hope you'll vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
My name is Cheryl Kirkpatrick. I live at 801 Carrollton Boulevard, West Lafayette, 47906. This is the first time I have ever heard about any of this, and my only concern is they had the audacity to have the trees cut down before they came here and got permission? You must be joking. I think they should be sued for the value of these trees that can never be replaced in any of our lifetime. This is outrageous.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I,
Do you want to speak? Do you want to speak, Michael?
I'm asking you about the state. What did they say?
if,
This is the point where we address the commission, so do you want to speak with them? We can talk after the meeting.
anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Mr. Schrader, would you like to rebut, please?
Mr. President, I do.
Okay.
Yes, the trees were infested with a pest. They were dead. They were at risk of falling down at any time with inclement weather. It was a liability on the property. They needed to be removed sooner rather than later, which is, you know, why it was removed recently. If he had an ulterior motive, he would have waited until after the meeting. It was done because it had to be done quickly for the safety of people in the neighborhood. Regarding the other objections that were on the merits of the rezoning petition, none of them regard, and I guess to be, I do have a photo of a, I don't think I can admit this off the phone into evidence. It's of the cross-section of the tree. You can see some damage that's done to it by the infestation, but yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. There is no currently any plan to do anything other than maintain these buildings in their current form as they have been for the last 30-odd years. There's no plan to tear them down. I understand that we're always fighting our last battles, and because of the planned development a few blocks over in the neighborhood, that's kind of what's fresh in everybody's mind, but that is not what is being planned here. And if this rezoning goes through and Hal Snyder is allowed to keep his ownership of the property, he has no plans for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. President, on behalf of Dennis Carson, Economic Development Director, City of Lafayette, we cannot support this project.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from the board?
I guess my concern is I appreciate everything that's been said, but when I sit and with my banker's hat on and you can't sell a property because it's non-conforming, you can't get a loan on a property because it's non-conforming. And I appreciate that people probably were notified back when all the changes were made, but sometimes people get letters, and yes, it is their responsibility to show up to a meeting to understand what's going to happen to their property, but a lot of times maybe the verbiage isn't clear and they don't even know what's going on. I don't know what transpired. That's been many moons ago. So I do struggle with this, and I feel like this homeowner is caught between a rock and a hard place because his only option is to take these back to single families, which I don't know what kind of income, loss there could be there. So I do struggle with this.
Any other comments? You have a yellow ballot.
We have 13 votes recommending against, 2 in favor.
Okay, this case received a recommendation or a denial and will now be heard by the City of Lafayette at their December 4th meeting. And they will make the final decision at that time.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2912, DA Mann LLC, R1B to R4W.
I second.
Okay, moving over to West Lafayette. This is along the US 231 corridor on the western side of the city, right on the city limits edge. The nearest intersection being major intersection Lindbergh with US 231. And this is the site in context based on existing zoning. And just for the audience's sake, the city limits essentially surrounds this property on its northern and western boundaries. And so the unincorporated county is just beyond those points. The site's wooded, currently undeveloped, as is the neighboring properties to the east. And then, of course, we have the Sherwood Forest single-family subdivision to the west and north. Public facilities are available to serve the site. In this instance, no buffer yard would be required where 2 residential zones meet if this rezone petition were approved. Go ahead and just leave it on that. In our comments, we reference this is part of the US 231 corridor plan, which was a plan adopted in 2018 by the City of West Lafayette. and it concerned future land uses within the city limits along the US 231 corridor. So it's sort of on its western edge, it's sort of, is really just this portion of the property is really the most extreme edge of it, but it is within the city limits. No part of the unincorporated county was part of that proposal. Within that plan, this property and its neighbors to the east were labeled medium-density residential. And that land use category we define in our staff report. It calls out specifically a denser mix of single, two-family, and multifamily residential structures, utilizing design standards consistent with the R2 and R3W zones, unless plan development zoning's used, because plan development zoning is a negotiated product. So the staff's opinion, the R3W and the R4W zones are identical in every way except the density option. And in our experience with this zone, the site limits what you can do given that density allowance, because every unit still has to provide parking. The height standards are the same, the setbacks are the same, the lot coverage is the same. There's no density cap. The R3W has 15 units per acre, I believe is the magic number. Yeah, and the R4W does not. So materially, what you have on the street are almost identical sort of urban forms. And so it's staff's opinion that this rezone petition is really in the spirit of what the plan was trying to accomplish, which is essentially low-rise suburban-style multifamily development was acceptable in the medium-density residential land use category. So that's why it's our opinion that this can be supported. And again, given this site's unusual limitations, it's very long and skinny. So that is going to provide some development constraints for the site that is certainly going to keep this a fairly modest effort if it's a multifamily one. Obviously, in multifamily zoning, you can do single family, you can do duplex, but I'll leave it up to the developer to disclose what their plans are for the site, because no site plan or proposal was submitted to us to deliver to you. So, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Ryan Munden with RTS Law here on behalf of the petitioner, D.A. Mann, LLC. The petitioner's had multiple meetings with West Lafayette City staff to discuss this project. The petitioner actually started out with a higher density project that consisted of 34 townhomes along the west property line and 3-story buildings to the east for a total of 130 units. The city thought this was too dense, so the petitioner scaled the project back. It will consist of all townhomes or row houses with no 3-story multifamily buildings, and the unit count was reduced from 130 to 60. I provided you with a handout, which the first 2 pages include representational renderings, to give you an idea of the style of the project. This isn't exact, but like I said, it kind of represents the style that the developer will be going for. The 3rd page of that handout shows an architectural site plan that shows the orientation of the building. The parking will consist of garages on the first floor of the units with a tandem parking space behind it. There's no large parking lot. This isn't a large multifamily project like you see in other parts of West Lafayette. Given the muted scale of the project, we believe this will be a complementary addition to the area. And as Mr. O'Gara referenced, this is consistent with the 231 corridor plan. D.A. Mann is a local company owned by Andrew Bushy. who is a local builder who has developed a number of projects in West Lafayette and Tippecanoe County, as well as Dustin Zufall. His family has significant real estate holdings in West Lafayette, so these are vested members of our community. We believe this is a very modestly designed project, as Ryan mentioned, and it's been vetted by West Lafayette, who incorporated their comments, so we think this will be a good project for this area. We concur with staff's report and recommendation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Somebody start.
And again, after you've spoken, if you could please come to the table and sign in. Thank you.
Dear committee, my name is Irina Hinkel, and I'm 19 years resident in Sherwood Forest. Our neighborhood is against this project. It is just, we are in shock because people have been living in that neighborhood, some people, for a long time. We put our heart into that place. And I'm sorry, it is difficult for me to speak. And our situation is different situation. Please consider it, because Highway 231 is right behind our neighborhood. It is very close. And cars go high speed, and we already have a lot of noise, pollution and dust, a lot of dust in house. So cutting trees, it will be just making it worse, and people want to live a good life. We have children and grandchildren. So, and if this project happens, there will be another road built behind our neighborhood for like parking. It will be even worse. It is not imaginable. And then that forest is so beautiful. It is just, it doesn't make sense to build apartments cutting pretty many years grown trees when we have like next to it a lot of just empty grass where apartments could be built. It doesn't make sense. And I think it would be better use for that land. So also there are a lot of wild life animals. They will have no homes. They will not know where to run. And we have been living there for a long time, and we watch all those animals. It is just heartbreaking. And we don't know how we will explain that to children. Even just that development time will be so disrupting. Because, I mean, we teach children through books to love nature, and we will destroy it just next to us. Please consider that. And so I hope we can suggest better use of that land or keep it like it is. Because residents matter. We are people, and we can't be dismissed. Please.
Good evening. My name is Julie Sharp. I live at 2209 Robin Hood Lane in West Lafayette. And I was a planning and zoning commissioner in another state for 13 years before I moved to West Lafayette 2 years ago. I opened meetings with the public by stating we're zoning for the community of tomorrow. What will our neighborhood and our community look like in 50 years? I appreciate the service that you all provide and the thoughtful decisions you make on our behalf and for Tippecanoe County. Been in your shoes. I do not think that R4W is an appropriate use for the Lindbergh to Klondike corridor. Goal 3 of the US 231 corridor plan is environmental preservation and quality of life, with an objective that states promote neighborhood identity and a sense of place. If you drive west along Lindbergh after crossing US 231, you see agricultural fields to the south, forests to the north, including the area that is up for rezoning, and then a series of well-established neighborhoods to the north of Lindbergh. A new development of single-family homes that you just discussed earlier, Three Meadows, is to the south, just before Klondike. Up to Klondike, the area is primarily single-family homes. To reinforce the objective of promoting neighborhood identity, appropriate zoning would continue with single-family homes. A high-density townhome complex is out of character with the existing housing stock and out of character with what the Lindbergh to Klondike corridor should look like. I think R4W could be considered as spot zoning in this particular location. The closest R4W I could find is several miles away along Northwestern Avenue near the roundabout with Yeager Road. R4W is not appropriate for this particular property on Lindbergh. The comprehensive plan calls for future land uses of this area as medium-density residential. A more appropriate use of this property is to continue the current zoning of R1B or rezone to allow a slightly more dense arrangement of single-family homes as R2. The northeast corner of Lindbergh and US 231 is zoned currently R2. The neighborhood is a wildlife corridor, as my neighbor, she's my next door neighbor, just said. I had a stag with a rack of horns in my backyard last week. Muskrat, ducks, herons, and eagles are some of the wildlife I've seen from my back porch. An R4 zoning classification would destroy the forest and displace wildlife. The staff comment on the zoning application references that a lack of density cap in R4W doesn't materially affect the intent of the land use plan's recommendation. What's missing in the staff report is that the recommended zoning change will have a significant impact on traffic patterns, neighborhood cohesiveness, wildlife, and corridor aesthetics. Sherwood Forest has a strong and cohesive neighborhood identity. You can see that by all these folks here tonight. I chose to buy a home in this neighborhood when I moved here because of the tree cover and the rural feel of the neighborhood but being close to amenities. I request that you deny the application to change the zoning to R4W based on three things: the need to preserve neighborhood and corridor identity, the inappropriateness of R4W zoning for the corridor, and an intent to zone future low or medium density housing that is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and in accordance with existing housing stock. Thank you.
My name's Jim Shank. I live at 2300 Robin Hood at the top of the cul-de-sac. I used to live in Lexington Farms, which is misnomered, very close packed planned development. When I got a job at Purdue and wanted to live close to Purdue, I searched for 2 years and looked at thousands of property possibilities online and visited scores, including in Lake Robin. And that's when I discovered Sherwood Forest. It really is a forest. And it was stepping back into the 70s or 80s, a childhood I wanted to give my children, which I've been able to do so far. But Lake Robin took out acres of old-growth oak that looked like Sherwood Forest in England. NDOT took out a bunch of trees, but still we're protected by a wetland, a pond, an apple orchard, and a mini farm, and still part of a forest. And that's good, because the highway, when they built it, was only supposed to give us X number of decibels. And I've gone out there with decibel meters from the first day on 13, and we've always been exposed to more decibels than the state has promised and required. And that forest helps protect part of the subdivision from that. After we fought off annexation, because we didn't want to be part of the city and we didn't want urban development, this townhouse complex development belongs someplace else, perhaps in Chauncey, where there's density. This is an urban type development. At the time when we did it, I said good fences make good neighbors. The fence as I said then, it was understood to be was 231. And just because there's this little piece of land that West Lafayette kept to itself, that doesn't really apply. As you point out, for a mile and a half over a mile and a half in each direction, about a half mile north, nothing but R1. And there's plenty of places on 231 for this type of development. You could be next to stores, trailer parks, schools, stadiums, university buildings, other high-density, airports. There's all kinds of places. We're the only subdivision right on 231, and we've already been targeted with a storage shed complex, and now with a high-density housing. And this place has already been rezoned. After the annexation and after the corridor plan, this was already annexed from R1 to R1B. That's the appropriate annexation. It wasn't picked out of a hat at the time, and it remains the appropriate. And there's people buying and tearing down houses and building bigger houses to live within the boundaries of West Lafayette. This property would be perfect for someone who wants to live in West Lafayette and have a big lot and a big house. And the buyer is obviously willing to deforest. Well, I know a land that has major retail to the northeast, apartments to the northwest, senior housing to the west, highway to the south, and a golf course to the east. And it's within West Lafayette. It's the celery bog. And if the idea of building apartments like that is offensive to anyone here building it in a celery bog, it's equally offensive to us to want to build it next to us in what is our Sherwood Forest. No one in West Lafayette is going to be injured by this action, and if you pass it along, it's going to go to a West Lafayette Council that's going to rubber stamp it. In fact, probably the votes are already there. But immediately after annexation, I was approached by a senior member of the Dennis administration, who was presumed perhaps to be his successor. And he approached me at a Purdue event, and he goes, "Hey, Shank, what's it like? You enjoy living out in the county?" And I said, "Yeah, there's plenty of trees and birds and fresh air, and it's dark at night, and it's quiet, and we've got political leadership that's responsive and not hostile to us." And he snarled, and he's on this panel as we speak right now. He snarled, "We'll see how that works out for you." And I asked this panel to not allow that type of threat against us, maybe only made to me personally, but it was indicative of a certain attitude of the city as it approached into our rather rural type area. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrew Bonta. I'm a resident of 2075 Robin Hood Lane. And I agree that the petition to rezone several acres of R1B single-family residential neighborhood to R4W multifamily residential is a blatant example of spot zoning and skips over several zoning categories not characteristic of the existing housing along Lindbergh Road. In addition, a study of the topography of the area would reveal that flooding issues are prevalent in our neighborhood, with the woods sloping down from the proposed building site all the way to the homes on either side of Robin Hood Lane. I already struggle with flooding in my home during big rainstorms, and paving over a large section of woods will only worsen this phenomenon, causing severe property damage. In addition, I have to question the wisdom in raising mature woods rather than farmland that has already been deforested. The Sherwood Forest neighborhood in which we live is more than just a collection of single-family homes. The titular forest is a sanctuary for deer and even coyotes, along with a smaller assortment of creatures. Just last night, I saw 2 deer on this exact lot that's proposed to be rezoned. Building such a dense housing in this area will displace numerous wildlife, causing more frequent run-ins between humans and these animals, and posing dangers to both them and the people and pets that live there. Beyond the threat to our local fauna, high-density housing brings with it the loss of the rural characteristics that define our neighborhood. The woods, currently a source of breathtaking sunrises, would become instantly occluded for any not living exactly within the new development, leaving us exposed to apartment buildings and parking lots and losing the sense of privacy many of us are accustomed to. Notably, as some have mentioned, our neighborhood rests outside of the West Lafayette city limits. something that was a major factor in my decision to live here, along with my wife and 2 boys. In this neighborhood, we rely on well water to sustain us. The burning of leaves is commonplace, and children safely walk down the middle of a road that has no sidewalks. Rezoning the surrounding area to R4W is completely incompatible with our rural lifestyle and would certainly cause noise pollution both during and after construction, something that threatens my livelihood as an individual working from home. I urge the zoning board to consider the long-term consequences of this petition. Let's preserve the rural characteristics that make our neighborhood unique, the balance with nature, the ability to enjoy our surroundings and wildlife, the peace and privacy. Our way of life is a precious asset not worth sacrificing for yet another high-density development. Please do not take the forest out of Sherwood Forest. Thank you for your consideration.
My name is Clayton Lean, and I live at 2563 Nottingham Place. I have already written about my feelings on this issue, and I strongly oppose for the same reasons that previous speakers have mentioned. I just want to feature a couple of things. The most important thing I think you can see that we are constantly stressing is that this is a very unique, long-established neighborhood. There is nothing quite like it, all right, because partly of the forested area around it and our love of natural life, which all of us do. My letter included anecdotes of wildlife that I have in my backyard all the time. None of us want this. I have spent a fair amount of time in the 21 days that were allotted us to work on this, to people throughout the whole neighborhood. I have not met one single person in the neighborhood who wants this. Now, Arena and I have worked independently on this. You have seen in your packets the signatures of the residents. We are a community. Now, one of the interesting things that you should know is if you look there, the only ones of us who were notified of this zoning change were those immediately along the property line. But we're a community much larger than that. What Arena and I have are, at the current moment, and we could do more, 48 people have signed our protest. This is not what we want. It is not characteristic of the corridor of single dwellings going along Lindbergh Road, and this would be a tremendous detriment. We've lived in this neighborhood over 25 years, many of us longer. This is treating us very badly, and certainly not a development which we have any fondness for. So if you respect our feelings, you'll deny this protest.
My name is Britt Brown. I live at 2074 Robin Hood Lane. And I've lived there for 6.5 years. I purchased a home in this, in the neighborhood because I appreciated the things that people have said before. It is a small, close-knit neighborhood. Neighbors know and look out for each other. I do, and I echo the need for the buffer between us and 231 that mitigates some of the noise. However, if this were only a matter of aesthetics, it would be difficult to make a convincing argument opposing the rezoning. There are other factors that needed to be addressed. I have attached a map, which I will submit, showing that there are no other similar structures within several miles of this location. And the ones that are multi-story have setbacks from the road area, such as University Place. Even the commercial buildings are single-story. There's nothing two-story that is not in a residential neighborhood. The entire length of Lindbergh Road from Salisbury to 400 West, where it terminates, is residential, and the business that is there is small business and single-story buildings. If the units are targeted at families, Klondike Elementary is already the largest school in Tippecanoe County, Have we accounted for those students? I'm also concerned that the two lots adjacent to the one in question could also be rezoned and then expand into a higher density housing complex, which we would continue to oppose. But not only is the building out of character for an area comprised of single-family residential neighborhoods, but the environmental concerns that have been mentioned are real. Drainage is a constant issue, and it has been in Sherwood Forest for many years. A ditch runs through yards in the neighborhood, including my own personal yard, and every time there is a heavy rain event or snow melt, we worry about water coming into our homes. Additional hard surface that is needed for access points, drives, parking, and amenity would only exacerbate that problem. And as has been mentioned, many of us still rely on wells as a water source, and we are concerned about the quality and the consistency of our water, which is a huge issue in our community right now. In addition, there are several homes, including my own, that are on septic systems, and the disturbing of the ground from construction threaten that, and that is an expense that I am not prepared to do anything with now. And I also urge the Area Plan Commission to deny this request for rezoning.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Brent Jessic. I'm a resident of the Sherwood Forest community, have been for more than 15 years. My address is 2619 Nottingham Place, and I am here, like my friends and neighbors, to register strenuous opposition to this rezoning request. I share many of their concerns. First of all, that the rezoning action will likely lead to construction of a large complex, as we've found out tonight, that is badly out of character for our immediate surrounding area, which, as you know, is exclusively single-family housing. Second, the complex will likely have immediate and adverse impacts on the property values, especially of surrounding properties, but likely the neighborhood more generally. It just won't be as attractive as it has been. We're also very concerned about traffic and noise, which have already become much more noticeable with construction of the bypass and ongoing development to the west of us. I'm afraid if this development goes in and is as large as indicated, my children will no longer be able to bike or skateboard down that section of bike path because it will not be safe with that many cars coming in and out. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, what about the neighbors? Decisions are being made in the city limits, but the impacts are being absorbed by county residents, us, without any meaningful consultation. Where is the developer to talk to us tonight? He sends a lawyer, right? Who is this developer, and why have we not had opportunities to interact with them? The short-term housing crunch generated by Purdue should not be our problem. There are plenty of other locations closer to campus where high-density development is ongoing, very large developments. And again, nameless developers should not be permitted to maximize their profits at our neighborhood's expense. I urge you to vote no on this request, and I want to thank you for your time and consideration tonight.
Hi, I'm Abby Buchanan. My family and I live at 2525 Nottingham Place. And I'm going to try to speak quickly because I'm feeling emotional, and I have a 6-year-old who is also kind of losing his mind. So the reason my family came to this area is job opportunity and growth, and the reason that we stay is the essential character of our community. Like many others, we were brought here because of Purdue. We started off renting sight unseen in a new build neighborhood where I had to put a wreath on our door to remember which of the dozens of lookalikes was our rental. As we looked for a home to buy, we found many neighborhoods like this, houses and apartments thrown up in a rapid dash with emphasis on immediacy rather than longevity. And then we found our current home in the Sherwood Forest neighborhood. Its mature tree-lined streets and our wooded backyard feel like rare gems in this town. Whenever family and friends visit for the first time, every single one comments on how beautiful it is and how it feels like a sanctuary, and we agree. And its beauty extends into each of the houses and the neighbors who occupy them. We have a community of folks of all ages who take pride in this neighborhood and the area at large. It feels at once established and fresh. We take care of where we live and each other. I appreciate that there is an urgency to the housing situation in this area, but I also think it's important to consider what keeps residents here long-term and makes us want to stay and care for the long-term health of this area. For me, it's a neighborhood like ours that feels like it has both proximity and seclusion, and that's wrapped in the warmth and caring of my neighbors. A place where I drive in 5 years after buying our house and still marvel at how lucky we are to have made it to this exact spot. It's what keeps us planted here on the days we wonder, why don't we move back to where our families are, to head to New York or Minnesota and live on a lake with our family nearby. But it's this feeling like, yeah, we could go anywhere, but why would we ever want to leave this? It's a respite. It would be easy to view this rezoning change as affecting only the few who live in this neighborhood, but I don't think that's accurate. I think there's a real risk of chipping away at the very things that make this entire town feel special and unique and worth staying in. Maybe it happens one neighborhood at a time, but in the end, it becomes devoid of character, and you may as well be anywhere else. It becomes replaceable. And if it's replaceable, there's less incentive to take care of it or to hold on to it. While you think about newness and expansion and convenience, I urge you to also keep in mind the stability, longevity, and character of our area. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Hi. How are you? Good to see you. No, you go first, and then I'll go.
My name is Ron Reifenberger, and I live at 4113 Copper Valley Drive. And I'm listening to all these comments, and it's very obvious that a decision made today is going to have unintended consequences that most people in this room probably won't appreciate. And so the issues that I'm concerned about is there city water that's already available for this property, right? Because I've seen places put in, and then all of a sudden you got to run a separate city water line in. That's going to be a big problem if that's true. Sewage is also going to be an issue. Will this new property have a septic tank system? Or will they be able to easily connect to existing sewage lines? And if there's 60 units being put in, that tells me there's going to be something like 100 to 120 extra automobiles that are going to be parked on the property, roughly. So are you going to put a stoplight in Lindbergh Road to let these cars come in and out? So when I listen to all this, these are the unintended consequences that I would really like to see addressed before this proposal is approved, right? I haven't heard anybody talk about any of these nitty-gritty details. Not saying that you don't do your job, you've probably already looked into it, but it has not been explained to me or to anybody in this room. So I don't think it's a good idea based on what I've heard, and I hope you agree.
Good evening. My name is Julie Hunter, and I live at 2615 Nottingham Place. And so that's in Sherwood Forest, and we've lived there for 33 years. And we love our community and our neighborhood. And if it gives you any idea about how much we love our neighborhood, we have yearly cookouts. I see people doing things like helping other people with their leaves, getting up on roofs and blowing out gutters. I mean, we really do have a close neighborhood. And one of the reasons that we love our neighborhood so much is that we know the people. And my husband and I, Mike and I, we walk our neighborhood almost every day. And I'd like to ask you, have you ever been in our neighborhood? Because there is joy. There is joy in where we live. And putting a multi-unit house or multi-unit complex where you're taking down all the woods and you're putting that almost up. If you look at the size of that, it's about 5 times or 6 times as long as it is wide. And you're going to be putting that right up against my neighbor's back fences. And that's going to take out a lot of the ambience in that neighborhood, and it makes me extremely sad. High-density housing is really not appropriate. It's incompatible, really, with our neighborhood. And I also want you to know that this stuff has been in the works for a while, and we hear about it 3 weeks ago. I don't think that that's right. And I asked the lawyer today that I talked to on the phone who's involved in this, because he said, yeah, well, there's going to be development behind my house. And I said, and you know about it, right, because you're involved in it. I said, but how would you feel as a homeowner? And I found out about this last Saturday as I'm walking in the neighborhood talking to the people who got the letters. And they say to you, this is what we're doing. And you know what everybody tells me? It's already decided. That's what everybody tells me, that you've already made your mind up, and that if I take it to the city council, they've already made their mind up. And so today, when I speak to the lawyer, he said this has been in the works with the city council for all this time. So whoever came up here first, I'm kind of hard of hearing, so I didn't hear his name. But he said they look like they've made some concessions because we started with 130 units, and now we're down to 60. And I'm like, you haven't made the concessions that you need to make. And I honestly, it's the first time in 33 years I've said, maybe I'm going to move. I want to move. Anyway, as you can see, I'm opposed to this. And I hope that you will, if you've never been in there, if you've never gone to that neighborhood, take a drive by. Take a walk in the neighborhood. And think about it happening in your backyard. Thanks.
Zachary Bale, 124 Connolly Street, West Lafayette. A lot of great comments in opposition to this particular request. I, too, have a petition against this. We had 43 signatures and counting. I'll just read it in the record and make some comments. We, the undersigned, are opposed to the request for rezone Z2912 for the 2.709 acres from R1B to R4W in West Lafayette. In the petitioner's application, the reason for request, which was optional, was left blank because the R4W designated was selected. The assumption is that this will be as dense as possible due to the lack of a density cap for R4W. And as we learned tonight, indeed it was. The negative and detrimental impact on the quality of life for nearby residents and wildlife, including deer, assortments of birds, woodchucks, pollinators, and more, who currently live in these woods, will be devastating if this rezone is approved. However, the APC staff did not even consider the wildlife in their environmental analysis in their report. Our request to deny this rezoning is supported by the community's expressed concerns regarding quality of life, density, wildlife impact, safety, traffic, noise, and lighting in the area. To prevent the erosion of this R1 neighborhood and to maintain its high quality of life, voting against this request for rezone is reasonable and justified. We look forward to your discussion here tonight. And so with that being said, as other people have mentioned, I think it's important to point out the fact that the petitioner chose to obfuscate its development plans and its application both to the APC and to the wider community speaks to the character and values of DA Mann, LLC, and to Andrew. And it's also fascinating for those that represent West Lafayette on this particular board to learn that the city has been in in-depth talks, as we just heard, without any transparency to the public. Also speaks to the character of the city's development department and those that were involved in those conversations. We must do better. We must actually be proactively transparent so the community can know and be informed and engage in honest discussions. As Ryan shared, R4W is mostly the same as R3W. However, not only is there not a density cap, there's a density floor. So if you look at the UZO, it clearly states that R3W has a density level less than or equal to the maximum in its table, where R4W is, it has to be equal or greater than the minimums in its table. So it doesn't have the cap, but it also has minimums that have to be done. And as we heard, they started with 130 units, and they went down to 60. And so I think in the future, to maybe prevent this, it would be appreciated and vital for the understanding by the public, and I'm sure those on the APC as well, if we could understand what's the range of minimum, maximum units that could actually exist given the constraints of the UZO for setback, lot size, et cetera, so that we can actually know the spread and understand the magnitude of what kind of development come to be in these particular areas. And to be clear, this isn't a question about R4W versus R3W. The land is currently designated R1B, as we heard, and ideally, it wouldn't be developed and remain the wooded habitat and quality of life provider that it is to the Sherwood Forest neighborhood. It leaves one to wonder, why isn't an R2 designation being sought? Or just developing the R1B zone that it currently is, if it's going to be developed at all? Most likely, profit is the motive. And if we look at the bypass plan, the 231 bypass buildup plan, the medium density, as we heard, includes pictures of single-family homes densely packed together in apartment buildings of various sizes, 2 to 3 stories in height. And one of the bullet points says this is designed primarily as a transition between lower density residential environments to commercial areas. However, in the future land use section, there isn't any commercially zoned areas nearby to transition to. And there are other medium density and low density residential areas, but nothing commercial. And as another curious point, the by right developments that were mentioned in the bypass plan were churches, parks, and schools may be encouraged. However, just to inform the public, other by rights would be, as we heard, some of them talked about, administration of housing programs, nursing and personal care facilities, rooming and boarding houses, bed and breakfast. Ironically, forestry is not permitted. Fraternities or sororities, and everyone's favorite, transient guest houses. This lot could become just a sea of Airbnbs and VRBO vacation rental homes with great proximity to Purdue. And there would be nothing this board or community could do about it, since transient guest houses are permitted in an R3 and R4 zones by right. And again, the petitioner did not include the reasons for this rezone in the application, leaving everyone to wonder if they get this designation, how would they exercise it? And now we know. They would go for 130 units, but after talking to the city, they said too much, and so they put the kibosh on that, and now we're down to 60. And so finally, from that, 30 seconds. So finally, from the 231 plan, it mentions that we're supposed to obtain the highest quality of place, preserve the natural environment, and also provide long-term vitality in the city and the region. So with the petitioner silent on those, how can we assure that we're actually going to attain the highest quality of place, preserve that natural environment, and provide long-term vitality that we all know and demand? Again, I urge the APC to vote against this request for rezone. It's reasonable and justified for the reasons laid out tonight. We look forward to your discussion and your vote to deny. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Dan Kester. I live at 2450 Lindbergh, which is the property 500-foot length just to the west of that property, the long section there. One thing I like to do, I'm sure many of you are responsible for the bike paths that went across in front of my front yard, down Lindbergh, down Klondike, down Cumberland. Absolutely wonderful. The disappointment is if this property could not be R1, and years ago I spoke with someone from the West Lafayette Parks Department and someone from Purdue Research Foundation about possibly obtaining this property because it's a perfect area along the corridor. I looked at the 231 corridor plan, I looked at the West Lafayette, development plan, Parks and Recreation development plan, and this really just seemed, because the outside of the corridor, which I've seen also, I think it was the Parks Department talks about the outer green belt and the inner green belt being Klondike Road and the corridor there. You know the developments that are going out there. We sit in our front windows and we watch dog walkers, we watch families with young kids, little kids come through there. We stop and we talk to them all. It is wonderful. The bike paths are wonderful. You've heard about people's concerns for this development there, but when my wife and I travel, we find places that have neighborhoods like this, and they take properties like this and just make them into beautiful covered canopies where you ride bikes in, and little kids, they're not separating it, a dog park, a walking park, a running park, a bike park. They let everybody in there, and everybody shares it. It is really a joyful place. I see this in the middle of the corridor. On the outside of the corridor, which all that housing that's out there, I know Cason Park has got a lot of work going on it, but you have to cross 231, you have to cross Cumberland, And that for little ones, like we have a 5-year-old grandson, not comfortable crossing in there. To help develop outside the park, it looked like when I look at the West Lafayette Parks Plan, there isn't really anything going on for all that housing out there by us on Klondike, with all the work that's gone in. So most people use that loop that I talked about down Cumberland to Klondike, gets a lot of traffic. We really enjoy it. If this is going to be R1, that would be more the approach I would like to go. So I just wanted to put that out there and respectfully request you not approve this change. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is George Buchanan, and I live on 2525 Nottingham Place, and my main concern, or one of my main concerns, is the climate crisis that we are all going through, and by cutting down on this forest, I believe that will impact climate change. I know it's not going to be much, but I also think that by approving this, you will allow the rest of the forest to be cut down and change, and eventually making a larger impact on the climate crisis that, as I said, we are all going through, and is a problem not just for Indiana or, well, it's a problem for the entire world, and it's not gonna be, I know it's, I forgot it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
You did a very good job, and you should be proud of yourself. And you said everything right.
Cheryl Kirkpatrick, 801 Carrollton Boulevard, West Lafayette, Indiana, 47906. My father was a PhD professor at Purdue for 40 years in wildlife management. So you can imagine what his position would be on this, and what I lived and heard my entire life. And I'm glad he's dead and doesn't know what all you're doing. What is this about? There's only one point: money. What do the people want to do that are going to build here? Make money. That's all they care about. Money. They don't care about the wildlife. They don't care about all of the birds. He was also an ornithologist and had a life record of every bird that he had seen in every country in the world. And he could identify them by the way that their wing was used in the air, or their beak was held, or their claw was from a distance. So, do you think I'm not for this? Yes, I'm not for this building. These people all want to preserve it. How many of you are really happy when you go on the highway and you have to pass a killed deer? Are you really happy? Do you like it? Do you see the deer, or do you turn away? Why is the deer on the highway? Isn't it wonderful when you have all these other animals that are roadkill? Well, why are they roadkill, and why are they on the highway? Because their habitats have been taken away from them. And whose habitat took it away? I mean, who took it away? We did. You did. We did. We're pushing them farther and farther and farther, except they don't have any place to go. Now, somebody suggested that this land could be used for single housing, single dwelling housing, and they would have nice, good plots. And guess what? It's within the West Side School District, so their kids could go to the West Lafayette schools. And I've been here before, and all the people talked about how there is a housing shortage for families. Of course, it's for families that there's a housing shortage, because what do these people want to build? They want to build apartments. They don't want to build houses, because how many houses could they build on this piece of land? They could build 60 apartments. Tell me, how many houses could they build? And the houses would have, as their backyard, the forest. They probably wouldn't have to cut any of it down if it were planned correctly. You have absolutely no conscience if you allow this area to be destroyed. Maybe somebody should come in where you all live and tear down your trees and all your shrubs so that you have to face the sunshine all the time and hear all the noise from any road that is within a half a mile of your house. Maybe then you would get it.
Anyone else?
Yes, I'm Tom Jordan, 2596 Nottingham Place. And my wife and I lived in this community longer than one other couple who's not here tonight. And when we moved there, by the way, that's not our neighborhood only. It goes on around 2 more streets, comes back out to the highway there. When we moved there, that was the only housing development from what's now Blackbird, Salary Bog, which was a cornfield at the time, to Klondike. The rest of it was just open. There's only one outlet. You can go in and out that one street there. You can't go out any other place. And, you know, it is good. All I'm saying is that one strip of land that wants to be developed into a multi-complex is the only one in there. The rest of them are full. Everyone has a quarter of an acre, actually about a third of an acre or more in all of them. There's no other building to go in there. You can't build anything without tearing something down and putting it in. There are plenty of other places to put multi housing complex in. It's all up and down there. Why take that one? So I'll just put that in. It seems to me that we need development, and I assume you're going to develop that corridor on around to the river, I suppose. There's plenty of places to put that. That would be really nice to have one other house. On each side, there is one house there on the left. There was one house on the right, and it's set up to have, that one's gone, but you could set it up to have another one. And so I just say, I agree with everybody, just from the standpoint of being there longer, watching that one be the only place with nice, good trees. The rest of them have been put in, so we have other places. They have trees. They have silver maples and Bartley pears and willows. But that one is set up, was built with that in mind for single houses. So I'll just leave that with you, and I wish you would consider thinking there's other places to put apartments and multi-climates. We just asked you to do so. Thank you.
I'm Nancy Lean. I live at 2563 Nottingham Place. Our lot backs right up to that lot there. My concern, among all the other things that have been said, is it's so close to Purdue, and I am really afraid that the people that are going to rent it are going to be Purdue students. We lived in a student neighborhood for a while, and it was awful. It was noisy. There was a lot of vandalism. And I really, really don't want to live like that again. So I'm begging you, please vote against this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan Pozos. My wife and I live at 2618 Nottingham Place, and we are way away from this subdivision, this planned development. But when we moved in 22 years ago, we too had woods behind us, and then Wake Robin, 3 years after we moved in, all of a sudden they're tearing down trees. And what that has caused for us is light pollution, noise, undue traffic, and people have addressed the wildlife. When the 231 corridor was getting built, my son and I were coming back on Lindbergh, and we saw deer, fox, coyotes, and believe it or not, we saw a bobcat or a cougar sauntering across the road. And where are they all going to go? I mean, they're already getting pushed out from development down the road. So, and then when we walk our dog at night, we have to worry about coyotes all of a sudden being in the neighborhood. And I know some of our neighbors have come across that same scenario. So we know what the development's going to do behind, like Dan Kester and everybody down the road, because it happened to us when we first moved in 22 years ago. So I think we should oppose this and vote against it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Munden.
The developer is here tonight. Andrew and Dustin are here with me, so they'd be happy to answer any questions you might have as well. Just to run through the concerns and comments that we've heard, primarily we're hearing that this is out of character for this area. We do have the 231 corridor plan that was vetted when that was approved, and this does specifically call for multifamily structures on this property. So according to that plan, this is perfectly appropriate for this area. It is not the large apartment complex that they feared. I understand and I can sympathize with the concern about the apparent lack of transparency, but this is the way the process works. Is the process perfect? No, but we've complied with the process. We've provided renderings and site plans, which for a rezone we're not required to do actually. And for a rezone we're not required to explain exactly what we're going to do, but we have. We're not required to meet with West Lafayette City staff and propose to them what we want to do on this project and negotiate with them and come up with a compromise, but that's exactly what we've done. The fact that we've done that has been used as an attack on our character. I'm up here quite a bit, and I've never had somebody attack our character for trying to have conversations with elected officials. I think that's good practice. I wish we could do more of that. But again, this project is a result of conversations, negotiation. It's not at all what our client sought out to develop in the first place. It's a significant departure from that. With respect to profits, this project barely works financially. So it's not as though Dustin and Andrew are lining their pockets with gold here. If they wanted to, they'd go develop the Chauncey Hill Mall. That's not what we're doing here. This is a project, like I said, that barely cash flows. We've heard a lot about noise and deforestation. Mr. Bale accurately commented that this is not zoned AW. It's zoned R1B. So if a by right project came along, I can promise you that every one of those trees would be cut down. And there's nothing that anybody could do about it. We wouldn't have to come ask for permission. They could do a by right project and that would happen. Our client is sympathetic to the trees. They will do their best to preserve as many trees as possible along the fringes of the property. I would note that we're not developing all of that wooded area. We're only developing a small part of it that constitutes that buffer between the neighborhood and 231. But again, any by right development is going to cut down the trees and displace wildlife. It's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of this type of zoning, whether R1B or R4W. We've heard concerns about further development to the east. This developer has no plans on future phases to the east. That property is owned by a different owner. There's no plans to develop that. I've heard concerns about drainage as part of this project. A drainage plan will have to be approved. So any concerns about drainage will be further vetted. I also heard concerns about this being a student housing project. This is not being marketed towards students. This is market rate. The rent rate for these are anticipated to be around $2,000 per unit. It's a housing type that we're in desperate need of. West Lafayette, the county, Lafayette, our entire community is in desperate need of housing, and this type of housing. There's not much of this type of housing in our community. We're excited about the project. As I said, we've had significant discussions with West Lafayette. West Lafayette's excited about it, and we would respectfully request your recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munden. Questions, comments from the board?
I would just comment that it is served by public utilities and does meet the land use plan, even though it may be disruptive to long-term residents. It does seem like it's a project that's needed and it's not overly dense. Thank you.
Dr. Leverance?
Yeah.
I sit on this commission as a representative of the city of West Lafayette. And before this goes to city council, I'm going to vote against the rezone. But a bit of history is this neighborhood was slated for annexation in 2013-2014 major annexation plan for the city of West Lafayette. And they opted out. And here we are 10 years later, adjacent to city property with potential build-out. I would encourage that neighborhood to revisit the idea of annexation into the city, to have representation on the city council for these exact situations. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Is there a buffer yard requirement from R1 to R4W? There is not. Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none, you have a yellow ballot. We all knew about it. Okay. Goose where? Goose Jay. Huh? I could go several goes. Yeah, goes where? Goes where I would go. Goes where? I maybe, that's probably a butchering, but I'm sure we'll be first.
We have 9 votes recommending against and 6 recommending in favor.
This case then received a recommendation of denial and will now be heard by the City of West Lafayette at the December 4th meeting. Next case.
I move to hear and vote on Z2913, MITRE Group 2 LLC, GB to I3.
I second.
Mr. Hiddle, could I give a pause and let the room clear? Thank you.
I'd like to know all those people that built those houses out there. Do they think they didn't run all the wildlife out when they built them? But I can see that. Well, yeah, I understand. I mean, but they keep this lady on this wildlife thing. You know, she was, wow. Well, I tell you, putting this even though money amount to
Yeah.
buy in money. Do what? It puts me in the same pickle. I can't get out. I mean, I had this, yeah, I know it is. And of course, I know it's going to go to West Lafayette, so you know. Oh, well. Another one down.
Okay.
Holding bladder and no longer holding bladder?
No, you're fine. I'm
But thanks for asking. Well, when you want to drink 7.5 gallon of water.
trying to keep up here.
We're lacking one member.
Are you going to keep it? Are you going to keep this?
I am. Or wait, you want that? No, you can have that.
I can get it.
Well,
I got an extra.
we got copies.
We got a bunch of those copies. Thank you. I'll get it.
Okay.
Lacking.
Okay. We'll wait a few minutes here.
Should I say thanks for joining us?
Let's see if he's blushing when he comes back.
Yeah.
Oh, they're crazy. It is so loud.
It's great to see.
Mr. Hiddle.
Thank you. We have before us case Z-2913, Mida Group 2 LLC, requesting a rezoning of this property, which is on Sagamore Parkway. Actually, it's addressed on Callaway Drive. It is also fronting Sagamore Parkway, just west of the Parkway, and a little bit east of Concord Road. Directly across the street to the east is the Tippecanoe Mall. Property is zoned GB for general business. The request is to rezone to I-3 for heavy industrial. Property is improved with one single-story building. It's been there for a good long time. It is most recently used as a flea market. The property was actually zoned I-3 until 1968, when it was rezoned to GB, so it has an industrial past. It's been used for a variety of different commercial industrial uses, as I said, most recently a flea market. GB does actually allow for this use, but it limits the size of a lot that would host this use to 2 acres. This lot is a little over 2.5 acres, hence the need for the request. And the use that's contemplated is a wholesale roofing supply business. This lot, this area, as you can see, the pink is general business, basically, and the purple is industrial. So everything east of Sagamore, where the mall is, and then points beyond, is pretty much zoned GB, and west of Sagamore is a little bit of a mishmash, but predominantly zoned I-3, and there have been rezonings in the area to I-3 from GB. There is not a plan, there is not a comp plan in place here to give us guidance on what this should be, so we're pretty much left to look at existing zoning and development patterns. In our opinion, the I3 and GB there's just cause to consider it flexible here with regards to the desires of the user, and so we are supportive of this I3 and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Petitioner or petitioner's representative, please.
Ryan Munnan with RTS Law here on behalf of the petitioner, Mida Group 2 LLC. As David mentioned, the plan here is to have a wholesale roofing supply business. It will be owned by Mida Group. It will be leased to Beacon Supply. They're a supply business that operates across the United States. They have over 500 locations. The nearest locations from here are in South Bend, Indianapolis, and Chicago. The reason they need the entire, all 3 lots, not just less than the 2 acres, is because they plan on converting the rear of the existing building into their loading area and their yard that's fenced in with the shingles and the plywood boards, whatever other materials go into roofing. So there are some loading docks on the front portion of the building. The plan is not to necessarily utilize those regularly. They do plan to keep one of those operational just in the event there's a semi or something that were to come in and need to use it. But I'm told that that's not going to be a major part of their operation. Once up and running, they will have 15 to 20 employees. They will deliver to project sites as well as offer contractor pickup. But again, it's a wholesale operation, not retail. With that, we concur with staff's recommendation and report, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. I am mildly upset that Trader Buck's is going away because my wife and I have picked up some pretty awesome pieces of furniture out of there, so she'll have to find another place to pick. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Questions from the board? You have a yellow ballot.
Ballots cast, all in favor.
This case then received a recommendation of approval and will now be heard by the City of Lafayette at their December 4th meeting.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2914, Gene Ghostware, AW to RE.
I second. Z-2914, last case of the night. Petitioner is requesting a rezone of just under 22 acres from AW, agricultural wooded, to RE, rural estate. If rezoned, the petitioner would then subdivide and create a subdivision, a rural estate subdivision of 10 lots plus 2 outlots. You don't see a whole lot of RE rezonings, just to kind of maybe refamiliarize you with them. There's a couple things that are required of an RE rezoning. One, the property must not be located within a half mile of a public sewer. It must have at least 50% of its acreage wooded and untilled. The resulting development may have a density no greater than 1 dwelling unit per 2 acres, and there's a minimum lot size of, or lot area of 1 acre per lot, and that is, those qualifications and conditions would all be met by this particular property. It's about 70% wooded or untilled and about 30% tilled. And really the purpose behind the RE zone is to allow for very low-density residential development, estate development in areas that are otherwise unimproved, many of them wooded. And there's a goal towards preserving a certain amount of farmland in doing so. So I think those goals are accomplished here. This, by the way, is at the intersection of 100 South and 900 East, so it's the far east side of the county. Staff is supportive and would answer any questions you might have.
The petitioner or petitioner's representative have a presentation, please.
Good evening. My name is Gene Goswer with Butler Framer and Seifert Engineering, located at 11 South 3rd Street in Lafayette, here on behalf of the property owners. Obviously, the rezone is to accomplish the subdivision that you see on your screen. Approximately 20 acres of this land will be subdivided into 10 lots, averaging over a little over 2 acres per lot. The smallest lot size shown here will be about 1.3 acres, so we more than meet the minimum allowable lot size. We see this as a very good development for this area. The layout of the lots is put in such a way that we would accomplish very minimal clearing of any trees. There are many ravines that lead down to the middle fork of the Wildcat Creek, and those would also be minimally removed or filled in, whatever may need necessary for a home. These would be large single-family dwellings, large yards. They would be served by well and septic, as is the current residence there now that you see on the far west end of the screen. That residence would remain in place. We actually are in the process of creating a 2-acre parcelization around that right now in order to sell it in advance of whenever this subdivision can be finally recorded and eventually built. The road that's coming in now is in the location of the current driveway. It will be upgraded to a paved private driveway to meet the current standards, with a cul-de-sac at the far end for turnaround for emergency vehicles and such. That's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of this petition? Questions from the board? Comments? You have one more yellow ballot.
Fifteen ballots cast, all in favor of the rezoning.
This case received a recommendation of approval and will now be heard by the county commissioners at their December 4th meeting. Administrative matters? None. Approval December Executive Committee agenda.
I move that the following request for a subdivision be placed on the December 6th, 2023 Area Plan Commission Executive Committee agenda at petitioner's request. Placement thereon being without reference to compliance or noncompliance with the adopted subdivision ordinance. S. 5163 Brooks Brothers Minor Subdivision Minor Sketch.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
I move the following petitions be placed on the December 6th, 2023 Area Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing agenda. BZA 2031 Moth Properties LLC, BZA 2132 Lois Jakes Canaan Properties LLC, BZA 2133 She Cantor, BZA 2134 Jeremy Du Bois, BZA 2135 Blue Man and Chai Kong Chang, and BZA 2136 Cyrus Giroux.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
I move in regard to the special exception request that these cases will not adversely affect the comprehensive plan. BZA 2131, Mall Properties LLC. BZA 2132, Louis Jakes, Canaan Properties LLC. BZA 2133, She Cantor. BZA 2135, Blue Man and Chai Kong Chang. And BZA 2136, Cyrus Giroux.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I move the following request for variance from the Unified Zoning Ordinance. This is not a request for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. That's BZA 2134, Jeremy Du Bois.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Director's report.
Thank you. The director's report was emailed out earlier today. Don't have anything to add, but would be happy to answer any questions.
Any comments?
I had a quick question. There was something in there that said there's going to be a Wabash Township meeting on the 6th,
On the 5th, yeah.
or the 5th.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious how we're getting that information out to the public so that they would know where to attend and how to do that after what occurred from,
You want to talk about
like, the meetings in the past where it was kind of, at Klondike, where it was kind of confusing until they heard about it on the radio. A lot of people didn't know, or the TV, like, to go to the last meeting, which I realize this
Right.
is only
Well,
one
we're
meeting.
relying again on local media outlets as we did before. Also, our contacts with the township trustee, particularly in Wabash, has his own kind of constituent network that he has disseminated this sort of information out to. So it's essentially relying heavily on a media blast for this. The event is actually basically taking the place of the Wabash Township board meeting that they normally would have on that day. They're just going to turn the event over to our open house. So I wanted to get the finishing touches to this draft done, because the moment we make a media blast, people are going to want to see it. And so we're literally, probably tomorrow, we'll be uploading it onto the county website, and that's when we'll be making our outreach to all the media outlets. And then also our transportation section has done very well with a lot of their work, reaching out on social media, and so we're going to be doing that as well, making announcements, kind of the usual places on social media. So we feel this is probably the best way to do it, since it's just impractical to mail everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just was curious because with the holidays, it's like we're talking 2 weeks away, so it's like,
Yeah, and what we're going to do is, it's meant to be an open house, and it's going to kick off a public comment period that's essentially just going to go through the end of the year, and then we'll kind of pick things up in January. We'll have an online comment, box like we did earlier, and be able to review that comment with the steering committee before making kind of final changes to the plan before it comes here. So yeah, we're going to have the better part of a month and a half. I mean, basically take it to the end of the year and allow people to look at the plan, comment, call us, come in. And so the open house is just meant to be a forum to kind of just we'll have the maps kind of big poster size, and kind of just give a brief synopsis of how we got here, and just take people's comments on the spot. And it's going to be from I think from 5 p.m. to 9, so people can just drop in and out. So it'll be a little less structured than those public input sessions we held, which we had the nominal group process meetings that we had. This is going to be a little more unstructured.
So is it going to be at the firehouse then?
Correct, on Klondike, yeah. So look for that announcement very soon.
Anything else? Citizens' comments, grievances. Hearing none.
I move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.